Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a hidden system that basically controls who gets to become a healthcare professional in the US, and, more importantly, why it costs so darn much to get there. It's a system called Programmatic Accreditation, and it might just be the reason for six-figure student debt in fields from physical therapy all the way to pharmacy. So let's start with a pretty simple question that honestly has a shocking answer. If you want to be a pharmacist or a physical therapist or a whole host of other healthcare professionals, why has the price of admission just gone through the roof? For a lot of graduates, this is the new reality: $158,000 in debt. And that's before they've even earned their first paycheck. The reason for this isn't just about rising tuition. No, it's tied to this process called Programmatic Accreditation. And believe me, it has completely changed the game for healthcare education. To really get how we ended up here, we need to talk about a phenomenon called credential inflation. And yeah, it's pretty much exactly what it sounds like. The minimum degree you need to get into a profession just keeps getting higher and higher and higher. Now, on the surface, programmatic accreditation sounds like a great idea, right? You've got these specialized agencies that check on degree programs to make sure they're high quality. But what began as, a voluntary seal of approval has turned into a mandatory, you have no other choice gateway to even practice in the field. Physical therapy is the perfect example here. I mean, just look at this. Back in the 90s, a bachelor's degree was all you needed. Fast forward to the 2000s, and suddenly it's a master's. And then, since 2016, the mandatory entry-level degree is a full-on doctorate. So in just a couple of decades, the required schooling jumped from 4 years to about 7, and you can bet the cost went right up along with it. So how does a degree requirement just become mandatory like that? Well, it is definitely not an accident. It's enforced by a really powerful, interlocking system of professional gatekeepers. Okay, so here's how the whole machine works. First, a professional group, think the American Physical Therapy Association, decides its members should have a fancier, higher degree. Then, the accrediting agency they're very closely linked with makes that new, more expensive degree the only one they'll accredit. Step 3, the state licensing boards, who have the final say on who gets to practice, make it law that you have to graduate from one of these newly accredited programs. And just like that, poof, all the other, cheaper paths, like bachelor's or master's programs, are just wiped off the map. This all begs a really important question. If the professional associations and the accreditors are working this closely together, how independent are these agencies really? Are they a neutral quality check, or is it more like an insider's club? And what's so fascinating is that the government actually saw this potential conflict of interest coming. There's a federal rule on the books that specifically says these accrediting agencies must be separate and independent from the professional groups they work with. But here's the catch. According to critics, like Diane Hour-Jones, a former Department of Education official, that rule is barely enforced. She points out that the key agreements between these groups are often kept secret, which makes it pretty much impossible to know just how separate and independent they truly are. So what is it that gives this whole system its teeth? What forces pretty much every single student down this one very expensive road? The answer, as it so often is money. And we're talking about federal student aid. Just in 2023, the federal government pumped out over $114 billion in student loans and grants. It's known as Title IV funding, and for millions of students and their universities, this money is basically their financial lifeblood. And here is where it all snaps together. You see, to use federal student loans, your university's program has to be accredited. And to get a state license to actually work, you need a degree from one of those accredited programs. It creates this perfect closed loop where programmatic accreditation becomes the gatekeeper for all $114 billion of that public money. It's basically a monopoly, and it's being fueled by federal funds. So what's the bottom line here? What are the real-world consequences of forcing students into more expensive degrees and saddling a whole generation of healthcare workers with six-figure debt before they've even started their careers? The numbers really are stark. The median debt for a pharmacist is $158,000. For a physical therapist, $115,000. This isn't just some student loan problem. It's a massive financial wall that keeps good people from entering these critical fields, especially if they don't come from a wealthy family. Now, to be fair, there are two sides to this. Supporters will argue that these higher standards are absolutely essential for patient safety and for quality of care. They see it as a good thing, ensuring professionals are rigorously trained. But critics fire back that this system is just crushing students with debt, it's making workforce shortages even worse in fields where we desperately need more people, and it's probably hurting the diversity of our healthcare workforce. So, with the stakes being this high, we're talking about both massive student debt and our country's ability to provide healthcare. It's no surprise that the calls for reform are getting louder. And the solutions on the table attack the problem from all sides. Some people just want the Department of Education to finally enforce its own separate and independent rule. Others are demanding more financial transparency to see where the conflicts of interest are. And then you have more aggressive ideas, like calling for antitrust investigations and, maybe most importantly, breaking up the monopoly by creating new, lower-cost ways to get a license. And that really leaves us with the ultimate question. In our push for higher standards, have we accidentally created a system that just chokes off the supply of professionals? Figuring out the right balance between guaranteeing quality and making sure we actually have enough qualified, unburdened professionals, well, that might be one of the biggest challenges facing American healthcare today.